Good morning, everyone. I'm Raj. I'm part of the Firebase team. I'm a lead program manager at Firebase and help you folks and use our products. It is so exciting to see all of you folks here. I just want to give you a little bit of context here. I was here in this Bengaluru 3 years back attending a roadshow here along with Karthik and other folks. It took me 3 years to come back here and do the same show with you all folks. So exciting. I'm so happy to be here. And also, this is my first in-person summit in India since pandemic, although I had one in New York a few months back, like just a month back in Firebase conference. Has anyone watched the Firebase conference here, virtually, live? Few folks. Awesome. So we'll spend some time here today. Before I go deep into my talk today, I want to tell you a small story. So a few years ago, I co-founded a startup along with my fellow classmates in UC Berkeley. I was doing my master's there. We wanted to build an amazing, awesome marketplace for moms so that they can exchange the products. It's a two-sided marketplace. At that time, I think although the startup did okay, but we made plenty of mistakes along the way. I just want to ask anyone here, how many of you are part of startups or thinking of forming a startup? Awesome. You all look like me. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this story a little bit. So we made like few mistakes along the way while building the startup. So let's start with the first mistake. We thought that building a two-sided marketplace is such a great thing to do. We thought about this in our entrepreneurship class in behind the four walls, and we went into the market, started building it. Trust me, it was not at all easy to build a two-sided marketplace. That was a mistake, but it was okay. Second mistake that we made is technology. We thought, yes, we had a really cool idea. Why don't we use technology stack that's available, build it, and then go to the market? So we picked it was okay, decent tech stack. And we realized quickly that none of those products work well together. I'm sure you probably would have seen this in your life every day while you're coding. In our case, we had the database on the back end, middleware, UI, and we had to have a real-time database where the response time is very critical. So we had to stick with the one database, and we had to change everything around it. Trust me, since they don't work well together, we had to do a lot of changes around those products. What does it mean when you start changing it? You start accumulating so much tech debt to make things work, right? And once you start accumulating this tech debt, it's going to slow you down. You can't release the features on time. You are as fast as you are the worst component in your tech stack, and you are stuck there. That was our mistake number 2, not paying attention to what products do we want to use in our tech stack. And finally, when you thought you did everything well together, you end up making more mistakes in terms of how you want to reach the customer base. Right? We thought that we have this shiny app, we built it, and we thought we hosted on the App Store and everybody will start downloading it. Nothing changed, nobody downloaded, nobody even knew that we existed. So that was our third mistake where we had to really spend time, go and talk to the moms, go to the street, knock the doors. And literally every single day, me, my co-founder, we went and we tried, knocked the doors, and we started adding more and more people. We did okay. We had tons of users, but it was not that great. Although in this journey, we learned quite a bit of lessons here. Like we had to really think about what technology stack we want to use, how do we approach the users, and so forth. So I'm going to share I'm going to use this story along the way while you go through the slides. I'm sure you're wondering what happened to our startup, right? So we did not succeed much. One of our co-founders' spouse had a really successful startup. That was like $1 billion unicorn. So she left us. And the remaining 2 folks, we all ended up working for Google. And now I'm here helping you so that I can see my dreams come through you guys. Hopefully you will build a successful startup. So coming back to the talk for today is better together with Firebase and Flutter. So we actually think Firebase and Flutter work really well together, and that will help, like you developers have a very good experience in building your apps and products so that you can mesmerize your users, okay? But I want to admit that we are not perfect. I'm sure you would have come across like, hey, this Firebase should have worked well with Flutter, they should have added this, but we are making progress. We are really working hard to make sure that both Flutter and Firebase work well so that you can go and build amazing products. So now let's jump into quick product introductions. I'm sure it'll be really unfair for me to talk about Flutter where this room full of people have maybe 1,000 years of experience using Flutter. So I'm not going to make that mistake, okay? But for those who are new to Flutter, I will give you a high-level pitch. Flutter allows you to build beautiful, right? Natively compiled, multi-platform apps with a single code base. Am I right? Yeah. Awesome, right? How easy it is to build apps using Flutter. All you have to do is you can use the web IDE, start the application, and you already have a templated code. Click run, and you have this app running in your browser itself, and start testing it. Can you tell me any other product as simple as that? I seriously doubt. I'm sure you have this one while you are at some point of our lives, right? I have this cool idea. Either you're showering, or stuck in Bengaluru traffic, or Bay Area traffic where I come from, or wherever you get your better ideas. I'm sure we all have that, right? So you have this idea, how do I make sure that I build that? And that's where Flutter comes into the picture, right? Like, it is not going to get in your way. Like Karthik was mentioning, it makes you build your apps rapidly. And not just building some, just like a look and feel, but really high-quality apps so that it can get you started. So you are not thinking about really how this thing works, but actually you're thinking about your app, how it will appeal to the end users, and you can use the cool aspects of the Flutter to build apps. And that's where Flutter shines really, really well. Now coming back to my part, where I come from, Firebase, which is a little bit easier for me compared to Flutter. So you are going to hear a lot about Flutter today, so I'm not going to steal your show. I just want to ask, by show of your hands, how many of you use Firebase in your app? Oh, that's awesome. I should take a picture and send it to my team. And by show of hands, how many of you actually never used Firebase? I have 1, 2. OK, you're in minority, but I'll help you. OK? So at least for you, like what is Firebase? Firebase is a suite of products, right? And it's all nothing but tools and services which will help you build really cool product. And what we do one thing, right? We want to help you succeed in building really cool apps. And that's the Firebase mission. Helping app developers succeed in what they do. Whether you are an app developer, a web developer, mobile app developer, or game developer, we want you to help you succeed. OK? So let's take a look at what Firebase is, right? Whether you know or not, there are 3 million apps actively using Firebase every month. Probably last time when I was here, probably 1.2, I don't remember exactly. But this is the number of apps using Firebase every single month. And that's not just they range from startups, like a one-person startup, all the way to the enterprises where they use to make your lives easier. So you have all the big names here, Flipkart or Box, Wealthfront, Doodle, name it. I only listed a few here, but there are many more that use the Firebase for their backend or building the apps. So let's take a little bit deep dive into what is the Firebase, at least for those two folks. So I don't want to leave them behind, OK? So for building your app, using Google Scale infrastructure, you can use the products like Cloud Firestore or the Cloud Functions to really spin up anything, any scale, right? Whether you have a million monthly active users or even thousands of active users, it doesn't matter. The infrastructure will scale, and this infrastructure is at the Google scale so that it is definitely going to support whatever the needs you have. Next thing is, not just building the app is sufficient, right? We want to build with app with quality. So there are a bunch of products that will help you especially look into the insights, any issues. So any app that you build, it's not going to be perfect. It always have some issues. Unless you build a really cool app that works from day one, either it doesn't do what it is supposed to do, or it has nothing to offer, right? So I'm sure every app will have some issues. So whether you want to use like crash analytics, which I think somebody mentioned before me, like look at the crash logs and see where things are failing, or you want to monitor the performance of your app, you can use the performance monitoring, and so forth. And last but not least, driving engagement. How do you drive the engagement, right? Once, like I said in my startup, we had this really cool app for moms. Not a single mom knew about the app. Like, what the use of that app? If nobody downloads it, nobody uses it, it's as good as not existing anymore. So I think there are lots of products that Firebase offers can help you drive the engagement. Like, for example, analytics can offer you like which segments are using the app and how they are using it, so you can get all those insights. And if you want to target certain particular user base, you can use the cloud messaging to send them notifications and see, you can engage the users and bring them back into the app. So I know you all raised your hand that you use Firebase, but I'm pretty sure that you probably have not used all the products, maybe for good reasons. But I would encourage you to go back and check some of these products and see how they can help and benefit your app, and make sure that you are leveraging the Firebase to the fullest extent possible. Okay, now coming back, enough of introductions, stories, and let's jump into the case in point here, right? Why are we here? I think I want to tell the point that, Firebase and Flutter are designed for together, right? We are working very hard to make them work well so that they don't come in your way of building your app, okay? So, and I want to, Google is trying really hard to make sure that the developer products like Flutter, Firebase, Go, or Kaggle, or whatever it is, they all work well together so that you can build amazing apps for the end users. I think two things we are focusing on. One is accelerating the app development, not just building the app, but we want you to build the apps as fast as possible. At the same time, you want to run your app with confidence. Like, building app is one thing, but if you can't run the app with no confidence whether it will run, it will scale up or not, there's no use of that app, okay? Okay, so a few things that we are doing to help Firebase and Flutter well together. So number one is we are making Flutter as a first-class framework for Firebase, and Firebase is the app development framework for the Flutter developers, for you guys. So what does it mean? So we are consciously recognizing that Flutter is very important for Firebase, so we're going to support. And you probably would have seen that all the the Flutter documentation related to the Flutterfire has been moved to the Firebase repository. We are making available all the documentation in one place, code snippets, tutorials, everything is available in the Firebase documentation site. I mean, I came from software engineering background. Like several years ago, I actually worked in Bengaluru for some time. I don't remember seeing, any documentation or anything at the time. Without documentation, you all end up doing trial and error, and you know what I mean, right? But imagine, like nowadays, programming is like it's on steroids, right? You probably Google, like, okay, how do I authenticate this particular user? You probably see the code snippet and then take a copy of it, and then you try to customize for your needs and go from there. What about that starting point? If that starting point is not clean, then you are baking that starting point into your app, and then you start recognizing those errors down the line in your workflow, then it becomes really messy. I think one thing you also told us this, it's directly coming from feedback, is give us really good examples of code. Tell us the nice way to start with it. Tell us the starting point. And that's where this documentation will help you, where you can actually see earlier, if you are familiar with the Firebase, for every single product, we have how can you use the Firebase product using Node, Node.js, Python, and likewise, now you can actually look at how to implement the same thing with Dart and Flutter, so that you can just take the code snippet and start from there. Let's see how it works. So first thing is, this is the Firebase site, Firebase doc site. When you go there, you'll see that there is a add Firebase to the Flutter. And within that, you can see for each product, like how do you start with, like adding this is an example of adding a Firebase authentication to the app. You just go there, run the command for Firebase auth, which is nothing but adding that package, Flutterfire plugin, to your app, and then configure it and run it. It's as simple as adding Firebase to your Flutter app in 2-3 steps. So let's take a look at some of the code examples here. As I was mentioning, you have several examples for Firebase, like web version, Swift, Objective-C. The one you'll notice there is Dart. And that's the code right there. You can copy it and use it in your app freely. Isn't it nice? Awesome. And how do you add the Flutter app to a Flutter app in the Firebase console? I'm sure you are familiar with the Firebase console. It's a single point of entry for all your Firebase projects. It's as simple as click into the app, the Firebase project, and at the top you see that where you can actually select the Flutter project. And that's it. Just like you add the iOS, Android, now you can add the Flutter one. There you go. Firebase, Flutter, and you might be building a next unicorn. Make $1 billion. Okay, there are a few other things I want to mention here today. First one is, we also launched the split debug info. Is anyone familiar with the split debug info? Have you used it? Awesome. At least I see 3 hands. So let me tell you why it is. One thing you ought to be careful is when you're building an app, the size grows significantly, the APK size. The bigger the size, especially the countries like, where the internet speed is slow and people don't want to install it, the size becomes a biggest barrier for us. And when you build the APK, the build process actually wants to take all the information available so that when you go for the stack tracing, it produces everything for you so that you can actually debug. But that means you are loading your app APK with all the information so that you can get this one at the runtime. But with the split debug info flag, you can actually remove that, all the information, but still you can get the information, you can get a runtime information how you want, wherever you have the issue, you can easily debug it. So earlier, when you were using the split debug info before, the crashlytics used to be like this. It's very hard for you to see what the issue here. But now, you can actually, the crashlytics is able to help pinpoint where the problem exists, right in the code itself. Isn't it easier? Awesome. So in order to get that, you have to upgrade to the latest version of crashlytics for Flutter. We are on Android right now. iOS, I know you're going to ask for it. It's going to coming soon, in few months. But make sure that we are really working hard to make crashlytics is the best crash reporting for your Flutter apps. Okay, so hopefully you try that one and check it out. So now, since I mentioned crashlytics, let's check into how do we integrate the crashlytics into your Flutter app. Okay? So it's very simple. You can do it in 3 steps. The very first one is, like any Flutter-Fire plugin, you go to the root portion of your Flutter project and run the Flutter crashlytics plugin, and it will install the Gradle plugin for you. And that's it. Then you can you probably have to do the Flutter Fire configure, just to make sure that your Flutter environment is up to date with all the changes. And then Flutter run, your app is ready to run with the crashlytics. So this is the step 1 where you are integrating it. Now let's see how we can use it. So any app, if you want to catch runtime errors, you want to put some error handlers so that you can catch those errors, and you basically safely handle those errors, right? So there are several ways you can do it. So here in this case, we have the event in the initialize app. You have the Flutter error on error. We are basically going into the crashlytics one. So we connected that. Now anytime the error happens, it is going to catch that. Crashlytics will catch it, and then you can see in the Firebase console whatever the error, where it occurred, and whatever the troubleshooting you want to do. And I know that some of you use zones. And if you use zones, you can actually wrap the whole thing at the main function zone level, Now everything, all the errors will be caught, and then they will be sent to the Firebase crash detects. Simple. Now you don't need to worry about whether this error will occur in where it occurred and how you want to troubleshoot. Later time you can do it. And we are making some enhancements in the Android Studio itself where you can see these errors in the studio directly. You don't even need to come to the console, Firebase console, which will save you again 2 more steps. And now, if you want to test it, all you have to do is write a function, and here on the text button, I'm pressing an error, and that will trigger the exception, and you go and log into the Firebase console and see the error, whichever function that triggered it. And remember that, when I was telling you, we had this startup, we were like 4 people startup, and I was probably the only coder in the team. The rest of them were like, they were jazzy, they were going out and doing all the customer acquisition and all. So for me, if I don't catch these errors, it's a nightmare. Like a single person, I'm sure, how many are here single person startups? Can you raise your hand and tell me? 1-person startup, 2-person startup, 3-person startup? Oh, you guys are big, man. That's good. Like I think if you're a single person startup, any time that you can save is going to be like a 1 hour extra sleep. And this is where crash detect comes into the picture, where you can find the error as quickly as possible, bring the app back. Especially when you are in the infancy stages of your app, your app going down doesn't gel with the users. Your users are going to give you maximum 2 attempts, I would say. Even 2 is sometimes difficult. If you crash them once, they'll just go on, they will move on. And if your customer acquisition cost is high, there you go, your dollars down the drain. Okay, the next one is velocity alerts. Okay, now we know that we caught these errors. We configured the app so that we can see all the issues. What good are those? They just show up in the console, but nobody knows. Nobody is alerted. And that's where we have these velocity alerts where you can get alerted for individual issue, or you can even make sure that, in terms of aggregated alerts also you can get it. Okay, there are several ways you can get it. One is you can configure it to your email, or if you want to configure it to Slack or PagerDuty, it will support it. Anytime it exceeds certain threshold, not like you want to get paged every second. Let's say if you have 100,000 users, you want to set it to 1% crashes, then you want to get alerted. This is the best way to go. Now move on to the development environment. Have you tried the new emulators? Firebase emulators? How many of you tried? A few hands. You're all Firebase lovers. You should go and try the emulators. All the Firebase emulators are in GA. We just, last Firebase Summit, we launched them into GA. That means it has a higher support, guaranteed to have a better user experience. But in general, what does emulator do? If you haven't, I'm sure probably some of you have not used, it is actually providing you a local development environment so that you can actually iterate and do the development as fast as possible. Imagine you're working with Flutter. Flutter is like a hard reload. Press, reload, and see everything, right? What good it is, I have to deploy these functions to the server and get it reflected and then see it. That's going to take a lot of development cycles. But if you use the emulator, it's going to run on your local environment, and then the cycle time is pretty fast. So it's going to match up with your Flutter development. So please go and try the emulators. The experience you'll get from emulator is amazingly superb. So we have emulator support for several things. Real-time database supports the emulators. Cloudflare storage GA. Hosting is also in GA, which supports the emulators, storage and auth. So most of the critical products are available for you to support. Okay? Now, my favorite one, Firebase extensions. I closely worked with Inverte's team on this one. We launched it as part of the founding team, the initial team for the Firebase extensions. How many of you really, for example, if you want to build an app, there are so many things are repeated, right? Like login, image resizing, sending emails, you name it. At least 80% of the app functionality is repeated every now and then. And what do? We just Google it. We'll find the top 2 searches or 3 searches, look in the code, or go to the GitHub, search it, bring it to our app. We don't know who wrote it, we don't know what issues it has, and we don't know who supports it. Isn't it beautiful if you already have somebody like Google already packaged these extensions, a packaged pre-tested code that you can reuse in your app so that you don't need to worry about the quality of the quality of the function that's written for you? That'll save you a significant amount of time. That's where the extensions come into the picture. We launched this in 2019. It's already close to 3 years or 2.5 years. There are so many extensions on the extensions library. So there are few of them I list here. So we have the resize images, translating text where you want to translate languages, or sending an email on an action, or if you want to do some subscriptions with the Stripe, so on and so forth. There's so many extensions are there. I'm not listing everything here, but please check out these extensions, and you will really love them. And thanks to Invertase, where they have been partnered with us to build a lot of these extensions. And now recently in Firebase Summit, we launched a extensions marketplace so that you actually go and build some of these extensions and share with the outside world. And grow this library of ecosystem where others can benefit from it. Okay, so now we figured out how to use the prepackaged code. Let's see how we can secure the app. So authentication, right? Which is again a major a challenge for any app developers. But Firebase gives you this out of the box. We have we have this identity platform which will allow you to do several ways to authenticate. Like, for example, multi-factor authentication, right? Which is probably most common nowadays, right? Where you want to make sure that your app is as secure as possible, not just username, password, which is easy to crack nowadays. Or you can even do, blocking functions where you can check whether this particular user is valid or not within using the functions, and that makes it even more secure. And coming to the pricing, there's a pricing change for this one. Instead of charging per request, it's going to be by volume, so that you're not being penalized for a single request basis. So simple example, how we sign up. So you have, this supports the username, password, and then clicks the multi-factor authentication, where you have to give your phone number and then in catch-all, so you can use it, phrases. So Firebase supports out of the box right now. So please check out the latest updates and try this out. And then how simple is it, right? Writing with blocking functions. You're only checking for a specific domain can sign up. All you have to do is check for the username with the domain name. Then you're letting them in or out. Okay? So, like I said, the pricing is based on the MAU. You can also do the other way, the phone and other stuff, but with the identity platform, you can actually leverage the new pricing model, so that it'll be a lot more easier for you to work it out, okay? The left side is the middle one is the free one, and the rightmost one is based on the cloud pricing. Okay, so now comes to the app check. I think you built an app right now, and you are really trying to make momentum on it. For what good it is, somebody attacks you, somebody tries to take you down for whatever the reason, and that's where the app check comes into the picture. So this actually protects your infrastructure, like billing fraud, phishing, impersonation, data theft, or whatever it is. So app check is one of our popular products right now. It does all it does is checking the incoming traffic and making sure that the request is coming from a legitimate device. Okay. So let's take a look at how it works actually. So we have the app check. The way you do is, to enable the app check, you have to use the client SDK. And as soon as your app interacts with your provider of your choice, it gets the attestation, make sure that whatever the device authenticity, it stores that. The attestation is again sent back to the app check server for caching. And finally, when SDK caches the token of app, it verifies that, making sure that the request is coming from the right place. So it only accepts the, the requests that are validated, verified, so that your app is as secure as possible and protected from all the frauds. Nowadays, it's pretty common, right? Any successful app, you'll be surprised how many people want to take it down or take advantage of your app. So please make sure that check it out. Try out the app check. I'm sure it'll be able to help your app, whatever the app that you're building. So right now, these are the list of the products that AppCheck protects. More coming soon, but real-time database for all your real-time needs. Cloud Firestore, which is again, it's protected. Cloud storage for any of the storage needs, and functions, especially the callable functions. And then hosting. How many of you use hosting here? Oh, that's a handful. And you probably have issues, right? When you probably end up with US Central most of the time, and the performance for the same at this, if you're requesting the page in India or some other countries, it has to do a lot of round trips to get the thing. But with this regional cloud functions, you're going to serve both static, dynamic content close to the user, which has a significant performance difference. Okay, so we have seen that latency go down. I think it lists around 275 to 75 milliseconds in general. So this is, even though these are milliseconds, trust me, shaving off 200 milliseconds is a significant time for your app. If your app is really loaded, then this can be actually make or break for your app. So what we do is we are using the edge caching, where we store the your static or dynamic content at that edge level, so that this content is served as quickly as possible. Configuring is very easy. All you have to do is in configuring file, select the region. That's it. And then it starts serving. If you don't select automatically, it defaults to US Central, but you can override it. So, wrapping up, now at Google, we firmly believe that you play a critical role in making sure that our lives are better, either by building an app that's solving common problems, or building something affecting the global scale, like climate change. You all are making a lot of difference. Without your support, I don't think any of these products shine. And this is why what we do and why we do, because of you. I think this amazing community is what makes all these products shine. And even if one product uses Firebase Flutter, and that product is going to impact lives of billions of people, I think we achieved our goal. So on behalf of Flutter and Firebase, I want to thank you today for continuing to invest your time in our products and making the lives of all the app developers as happy as possible. I lost it? Thank you, Flutter Conf India team, for giving us the opportunity. You've been amazing. Please continue this journey of hosting these events and bringing all these dynamic folks to these rooms, and giving us a platform for us to share our product updates and helping pass this message. One last request. I see a lot of you folks here, but it would have been really great if you had more women tech makers in this room. So please take time. When you go back, talk to your women tech makers and bring them here. I think we want to see more diverse crowd here. I think that will make these products even more better. So hope you do that, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raj, for taking out the time today and for the wonderful talk. Can we have a few questions? Yeah, sure. So if anyone has any questions around Flutter or Firebase generally, so we would be happy to take them up.
Come on, shoot. I don't know the answers for every single question, but at least I know the question. I can get back to you. I think there is a hand there.
Awesome. Can one of the volunteers go up?
Hi, sir. Hello? Yeah. Hi, sir. So, my question is related to hosting, right? You said like there are now edge functions, right? Is it like automatic? Can there be like multiple regions that can be set automatically according to the usage, right? If the user is from North America or in India, it doesn't matter. It should be switching to those regions automatically.
Yes, as far as I know, I'll check back again, but it is based on the user request. Where the request is coming, it will go to the nearest edge network and gets the data.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Awesome, thank you. There is one more hand.
Why would I use this instead of AWS? Like what factors is there that makes me use this instead of AWS?
Isn't Firebase the best product on there? I'm just kidding. I think every single product is best in its own ways. It has its own advantages. Like I said in the beginning, we are making sure that in the context of the Flutter, we are trying to make Flutter as the first-class framework within the Firebase. That means it gets the extra attention and make sure that the products, both Firebase and Flutter, work together. And that's probably one reason you could try to use it, because you are...
But this kind of makes it seem like Flutter is kind of like a promo for Firebase.
Not
right?
necessarily.
Like if we have something working on AWS, why not make integration or toolkits for AWS as well as Azure or whatever else is there?
I think the Flutter team totally agrees with you. They are not just positioning themselves as only work with Firebase or only work with certain products. They want to make sure that this is a truly multi-platform, right?
Because the thing is, like, this seems to be on a path to a monopoly, right? Like, Flutter can make stuff for only, yeah, you get the idea. And Google is famous for monopolization, maybe.
I didn't hear
we can
that.
make a stand for it, but...
I find it like really easy. Personally, all my apps are Firebase hosted, so I love it. Can we take some other questions, because we have limited time with
Okay.
that service.
Hi. So it's regarding the app check extension that you talked about. So is it like, does it provide protection from like hooking and repackaging stuff like free RASP, or it's something different?
It is primarily for making sure that billing fraud and the requests are coming from the right place, and that's where. But I will take your question and check back whether that is supported or not. I can check with the team.
Thank you.
Your name again?
It's Mujahid.
Muzahid, okay. Can you meet me afterwards? I'll
Sure.
take your information.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir, for taking time out. I hope you are loving your time here in India. And with that said, I think we'll move on to the next few sessions that are up ahead. But really quickly, there are sponsored booths outside. There's one by Musk. There's Device, Flutterflow, and Invertase. So go out there and check them out. They have challenges ongoing outside. So if you win something, you can take it home. So that would be lovely. And thanks so much again.
Thank you, folks.